I'm Harold Carver, and with the help of artificial intelligence, we bring this story to life for you. Discover how one emperor's pilgrimage shattered gold standards. The full tale awaits in my book. In 1324, a single man walked into Cairo and broke the economy. Contemporary Arab historians record that his arrival caused the price of gold to plummet, the Mamluk currency to recover. This was not a myth of infinite wealth, but a documented economic shockwave that reshaped the Mediterranean financial landscape. While modern media often flashes a number like $400 billion, the true story is not found in a bank balance, but in the capacity to flood a market with bullion and alter the price of grain in Alexandria. To understand the weight of this gold, we must first strip away the gilded mythology that has accumulated around the Malian throne for 6 centuries. The empire existed not in a void of endless riches, but within a fragile Sahelian theater defined by the rhythms of the Niger River and the harsh limits of the desert. The central mystery confronting any historian is how a ruler in the West African interior could command resources capable of destabilizing the Mamluk Sultanate. Unlike Roman emperors or French kings, who left detailed legal codes and court inventories, of outsiders, we rely on the accounts of travelers like Shihab al-Umari and the fragmentary oral traditions of the griots. Was the wealth real, or merely a rumor amplified by the awe of visitors? The narrative anchors on the 1324 pilgrimage, the exact route, and the nature of the Mansa's power. To accept the popular valuation at face value, where power resided in the control of trade routes rather than liquid assets, al-Umari provides a staggering figure of 60,000 participants in the Mansa's entourage, herders and support staff required to move such a massive population across the arid Sahara. Skeptics dismiss this as medieval hyperbole, yet the logistical reality of feeding and watering such a group demands a level of administrative sophistication that rivals any pre-modern state. The challenge is to reconstruct how a state with no wheeled vehicles could sustain this movement across 2,000 kilometers of inhospitable terrain. The answer lies not in the gold itself, but in the infrastructure that made the journey possible. The empire was built on a complex network of wells, cisterns. For the caravan, this was not a wandering procession, but a calculated engineering feat that demonstrated the depth of the Mande bureaucracy. To comprehend the scale of the treasury, one must first grasp the physical mechanisms of the gold mines themselves. The economy was not driven by coinage, but by a bullion-based system dependent on the flow of gold dust from the forest zone. The South, the state maintained a strict monopoly on these sources, preventing provincial governors or local chieftains from fragmenting economic power. The primary mining clusters were located in the Bambuk fields to the west and the Bure region to the east. These were not merely sites of extraction. The Mansa did not simply accumulate wealth, he commanded the sources of it. The silence of these mines today should not diminish our understanding of the complex economic engine that once operated there, transforming raw ore into the diplomatic leverage capable of reshaping the geopolitical landscape of the medieval world. Yet, wealth in the pre-modern world was not measured solely in the accumulation of bullion. In the arid expanses of the Sudan, salt was currency, preservation, and sustenance, functioning in a duality with gold that modern economics rarely captures. The mines of Tegeza in the deep Sahara were the linchpin of Malian fiscal policy. The logistical challenge of moving salt from the heart of the desert to the banks of the Niger rivaled any military campaign. This vertical axis of need defined the dynamics of West African trade. The southern zones required minerals from the north, while the northern merchants yearned for the organic gold of the forest. The collapse of one would inevitably destabilize the other. The empire's stability also relied on a sophisticated bureaucratic apparatus capable of extracting surplus and projecting power across hundreds of thousands of square miles. It is a common error to view these kingdoms as loose confederations of tribes. In reality, the Mali Empire operated a dual system rooted in traditional Mandinka political structures. The capital city of Niani served as the nexus of this power, where the ruler was worshipped with a formality that mirrored the caliphal. Courts of Cairo. Authority rested on the loyalty of provincial governors, whose power bases were often semi-autonomous and rooted in local kinship networks. Her survival of the state depended on a delicate equilibrium between the. Without tribute, the kingdom was prey to desert raiders. Without memory, it was merely a fleeting moment. The transition of power to Mansa Musa in 1312 was not a simple succession, but the culmination of nearly a century of dynastic maneuvering and upheaval. To understand his accession, one must first grapple with the enigmatic figure who preceded him, Mansa Abu Bakr II. Some chronicles describe Abu Bakr as a predecessor who traveled to the west, before vanishing from the historical record. This lack of synchronization makes it difficult to pinpoint the exact moment of accession for individual Mansas. The Mandinka political system operated on a complex rotational leadership within the Kita clan, strength of the candidate's faction. This fluidity allowed for ambitious individuals to seize power. The mystery of Abu Bakr remains a prologue recounted by Al-Umar. The foundation of this empire was laid not with gold, but with the blood and ink of the 13th century by Sundiata Keita. The Mali Empire did not appear ex nihilo from the desert sands, and the Mandan Kuru Faba, the Confederacy of Mandan, the mechanisms that made Musa's pilgrim, and the administrative capacity to mobilize tens of thousands of Mananwa, all established by the mandate of Sundiata, who isolate Musa's reign from this genesis. The wealth of the 14th century was the direct dividend of the political innovations of the 13th. The foundational narratives preserved within the Mandan griot traditions, Hosa would eventually inherit. The most compelling thread in the story of Mansa Musa is the deliberate integration of Mali, of a bureaucratic state capable of sustaining immense wealth. Upon his return from Mecca in 1325, the Mansa initiated a program of intellectual and architectural patronage that would transform Timbuktu into a beacon of learning. The narrative is bound to the figure of Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, the Andalusian architect often credited with introducing the Sudano-Sahelian style. However, the historical record is permeated with legendary accretion, requiring careful disentanglement of myth from verifiable administrative action. Modern archaeological analysis suggests a degree of artistic agency. The question remains whether he was a revolutionary agent or a symbol of a broader transformation already underway. Her true legacy lies in the intellectual community that gathered within the walls of the Sankour Madrasa. The encounter with the Mamluk court in Cairo transformed Mali from a distant rumor into a documented sovereign entity on the Mediterranean map. The ruler at the center of this universe was Al-Nasir Muhammad ibn Kalawun. When the news reached the citadel that a king from the deep south had arrived, the reaction was a mixture of curiosity and bureaucratic anxiety. In the court of Al-Nasir, the rituals of submission were codified and non-negotiable. To stand before the Sultan, a king had to bow, but Mansa Musa refused to bow to anyone but God. This refusal threatened to unbalance the delicate courtly hierarchies. The encounter was not merely a historical event, it was a moment of transformation. The arrival of the Mansa in Cairo constituted a catastrophic economic event that sent shockwaves through the financial architecture of the Mamluk Sultanate. Contemporary chronicles record that the exchange rate of gold in Cairo, this was not a transient fluctuation. The gold dinar, the primary unit of high-value exchange, was a standard of account whose weight and purity were jealously guarded by the states mint. When Musa entered the city, he brought an estimated 12 to 15 tons of gold bullion, a quantity greater than the entire annual output of the Egyptian mint. The sheer volume of gold introduced into the market created an immediate and overwhelming excess of liquidity. The decade of devaluation was the concrete measure of Mansa's influence. The visual memory of Mansa Musa has for centuries been inextricably bound to a single, startling image in the Catalan Atlas of 1374. created by Abraham Cresques. This portrait depicts a black king seated upon a golden throne, holding a massive gold nugget in his left hand. It is not a figure gleaned from hazy travelogues, but a specific, historically grounded depiction of the Mandinka emperor. In the context of 14th century Europe, where Africa south of the Sahara was often relegated to the margins of the known world, this inclusion represented a profound shift in the European imagination. It signaled a moment where the myth of the Kingdom of Gold was reconciled with the emerging reality of the Mali Empire. The atlas does not simply map the physical geography of the world, placing Mansa Musa at the very apex of this new interconnected reality. The endeavor to quantify the material wealth of Mansa Musa stands as one of the most seductive yet methodologically treacherous problems in pre-modern economic history. To assert that he possessed a fortune equivalent to $40 billion is to misunderstand the fundamental nature of wealth in the 14th century. The true measure of his wealth was not the static accumulation of gold bullion, but the stabilizing capacity of that wealth. The question is not how many millions he had in a bank account. The final analysis reveals that the true measure of wealth, but in the capacity to create a legacy that survives the loss of all material things. The full case, the evidence, and Harold Carver's conclusion are laid out in the book Mansa Musa, The Richest Man Who Ever Lived. If this gripped you, the complete story, the full evidence, and Harold Carver's own conclusions is laid out in his book on Mansa Musa, The Richest Man Who Ever Lived, linked right below this video. Subscribe now. Every week, we reopen a mystery that history left unsolved. Thank you for watching. Get Mansa Musa, The Richest Man Who Ever Lived by Harold Carver on Amazon. The link is in the description. And subscribe for a new investigation every week.